Have you heard of Nick Fuentes? Let me be clear. Nick Fuentes is a self-proclaimed white supremacist. This isn't my opinion. This is his own description of himself.
When I got into the right wing in 2016, it was about three things: hating women, being racist, being anti-Semitic. Those were the three things that the 2016 revolution was all about. That's what the online right was about. That's what the right wing on Twitter was all about. It was about being sexist, being racist, being anti-Semitic.
In 2019, Nick Fuentes started a feud with Charlie Kirk. Not because they're opposite. I'm going to break down how this feud got started, who are the gripers, and how this whole fight shows that Fuentes and Kirk are really just two sides of the same authoritarian white supremacist coin. So stay with me, hit like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, and we'll break it down. This is Stephanie with Political Critical Thinking. Let me tell you, I've done plenty of videos so far on Charlie Kirk that I have not posted. Why? Because the backlash around him has been so fascinating. There's a whole effort to rewrite who Charlie Kirk is. Some people are appalled, just genuinely upset at the idea that he pushes white supremacy. You know, at first I thought these people were just lying, but honestly, then I listened closer. They were using talking points that sounded familiar, even convincing. So here's the thing. There's a reason it looks convincing. Kirk wraps himself in alliances that confuse the issues. They're pro-Israel, even while many in his base harbor anti-Semitic views. They have this diversity arm, like Turning Point Black, which makes him look inclusive. But when you know history, you understand that these moves aren't contradictions, they're actually strategy. They're the exact tactics that white nationalists have used for years, even the Nazis. They bring in a select coalition of voices as cover while advancing the same old exclusionary agenda. That's why I decided to dig deeper. I've been reading, researching, and talking once again to Trump voters, conservatives, MAGA Christians, and all sorts of people who love Trump or just sort of like him, but they all support him in some way. These are people who don't believe that they're racist, and they get furious when you call them that, or even insinuate that Charlie Kirk pushes white supremacist ideology. But here's the thing, they repeat racist dog whistles. They vote for racist policies and defend systems built on exclusions. So I thought the best place to start is not what I think about Charlie Kirk, but what about Nick Fuentes thinks about Charlie Kirk, a self-proclaimed white supremacist, racist, and misogynist. Somebody who's anti-Semitic by his own admission and pushes those ideologies every single day on his podcast.
Charlie Kirk, as we know, has become a white supremacist, and that's a huge victory. But he remains a Jew lover. he remains a Jew lover, and that I don't use language like that, you know. But he is an Israel shill. Like Charlie Kirk has become white nationalist, hardcore, but he remains a shill to the Jews in Israel. And I've said that for a long time. If Turning Point would just stop banning groypers from their conferences, maybe we could work together. If they would just stop bad-mouthing me and just reintegrate the groypers into the machine, that would be a win for everybody.
In 2019, Fuentes started a feud with Charlie Kirk. It's kind of like a flea starting a feud with the dog. It's not because they're opposite, and it's not because Kirk rejects his beliefs. It's because Fuentes believes that Kirk has watered down the message and made them palatable for polite society. And the reality is, Fuentes is absolutely 100% correct. But that's how racism becomes mainstream. Now, it's important to go back and understand how a lot of this started. And we can go back to the Civil War, and we will in this series of videos. But in this video, we're going to go back as far as 1971 and talk about the Powell memo. So in this memo, he told business leaders that if we don't control education, media, politics, and the judiciary, the radicals will, because they had already gained so much power. So what happened? They built think tanks. They funneled money into young conservative training programs, and then they started to call the universities liberal indoctrination factories. Fast forward to now, you've got Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA his podcasts, his youth rallies, but it's not just him. They've got Candace Owens, Ben Shapiro, Tommy Lauren, Matt Walsh. They've all been elevated as the cool kids of conservatism. They made it young, they made it sexy, and they made it cool. Now, before this right-wing machine, it was the liberals and the progressives during the civil rights era who had the energy, the clarity, the ability to articulate their ideas. Back then, they were the ones pulling in the young people. They were clear, they were compelling, they were convincing. And the right, well, they just sounded unhinged. They just sounded extreme, kind of like the liberals do today, unable to clearly identify or articulate our agenda, Oh, how we've fallen. This whole shift, this whole slick packaging of ideology, well, it's the direct child of the Powell memo. They indoctrinate while calling everyone else indoctrinated, and that's the game. So going back to 2019, Fuentes and his gripers, who are like his merry band of racists, they started showing up at TPUSA events, at Ohio State, at UCLA, where Trump Jr. and Kirk got heckled. And their message, Kirk is a sellout. See, Kirk, he has all the billionaire donors, and he creates coalitions like Turning Point Black or Hispanic Leadership Summits. That's not grassroots, that's optics. He supports Israel, he hypes Western civilization, and he talks about free markets. But every time, there's a dog whistle. Voter ID, CRT bans, attacks on DEI. This isn't about ideas. It's about making exclusion sound like common sense. And Fuentes frames it like he's the authentic voice of white supremacist. Kirk, he's on a billionaire payroll. He's the polished salesman, the gatekeeper. He's diluting the real fight. But here's the truth. Whether it's raw hate or diluted poison, it's still poison, and it still kills a society. Now, Fuentes' authenticity argument doesn't care about optics. He's raw, he's loud, he talks race purity, he mocks Israel and globalists. His fans love him for telling it like it is. But his feud with Kirk, it proves the point. They're fighting over style, not substance. This isn't just about black versus white. It's about division versus solidarity. When they dilute racism, it doesn't go away. It seeps into schools, churches, TikTok feeds, into people who swear they're not racist. And here's the kicker. The powers that be know that the civil rights movement only won because everybody came together. Black leaders, women, immigrants, the LGBTQ plus community, and yes, white men. So what do? They keep us divided. They erase history. They attack journalism. They tell white folks, you're the real victims. They tell black folks, stop whining. Slavery was a long time ago. And while we fight each other, they quietly go into shadow dockets in the Supreme Court and change the Constitution. They take away our freedoms and remove protections for all Americans. Ultimately, this all benefits the mega billionaires. It's not about the federal government being corrupt. It's about corporations wanting to infiltrate and corrupt the federal government. And who it hurts is the rest of us, because they keep us fighting while they cash the checks. So to wrap this up and make it simple, just remember that Nick Fuentes, he's the guy who's going to burn the cross on your front yard. And Charlie Kirk, well, he's the guy who will sell you the wood, the gasoline, and the matches. Both are very dangerous. Both come from the same system. One is raw fire, and one is the gas line feeding it. In the next video, we're going to dig into how political correctness was manufactured to tear down common decency and societal restraint so that this kind of language could creep back into polite society. So please like, subscribe, and share. And remember, they want us divided, and the only way that we win this is to stay united. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks.